Is buying a boat always a regret? I am considering a 14-foot John boat for fishing in local lakes. For those who own boats, are they always money pits? Friends and family have been warning me, but I keep thinking about the peaceful mornings on the lake. Edit. Life is hard enough. You have convinced me. I will stick to bank fishing and having fun. Story 1. Former Malibu wake boat owner. John boats aren't nearly as bad as leisure boats, wake boats, bass boats, or speed boats, but they entail a significant sunk cost. Here are the main problems. Ownership is extremely expensive in terms of regular maintenance and represents a substantial time commitment. If something goes wrong, that cost multiplies significantly. You must winterize it, ensure it's drained properly, regularly inspect it, and prepare it when boating season arrives. It's a costly and time-consuming task, even just to prepare it in the morning before hitting the water. Again, a John boat isn't as challenging to maintain as a wake boat, where you must worry about the interior, upholstery, sound system, and so on, but there's still a lot to keep it waterworthy. They're not particularly reliable. Something can and will go wrong. It feels terrible when you're excited to take it out to the lake, only to find you have dead batteries or an oil leak, ruining your weekend. There's an expensive initial cost, even for a small John boat. If you buy one cheaply, as mentioned earlier, it won't be cheap to own. The return on investment for owning a boat isn't very favorable. Depending on your location, you may only have 7 to 8 months of enjoyable mornings on the water. Weekends can be extremely busy, and if you have rainy seasons, it becomes difficult to enjoy boating. This time of year, many places can be quite unpleasant on the water due to the heat. I was fortunate when I sold mine, as there is a good market for wake boats in my state, where they are made, and I had the monsoon engine, which is in demand. Since it had low hours, I sold it for a couple of thousand less than I paid. However, I will never own another boat. Fuel costs are a major concern. Several years ago, it was over $120 just to top off. Using fuel with too much ethanol, commonly found at gas stations, can damage a marine engine, and boats consume fuel rapidly. This does not even account for the truck used to tow the boat, which also consumes fuel. Story 2. I'm not a boat owner, but I think it's one of those expensive, depreciating items that people end up using much less than they hope to. Story 3. Boats are typically a financial burden that, depending on your location, may only be usable for half the year. Story 4. Money pits. My husband and I owned a 42-foot sailboat, and it was a nightmare. If you can do your own maintenance and upkeep, great. If not, a friend with a boat is even better than owning your own boat. Story 5. No one is discussing a small John boat when they refer to people regretting their boats. They are talking about ski boats, offshore boats, and wake boats. A John boat with a hand throttle? If you wear your hat backward, you'll be just fine. Story 6. Bring on another 1,000. It is better to have a friend with a boat and cover the cost of food, snacks, and fuel whenever you go out with them. Additionally, smaller freshwater boats are more manageable and require significantly less maintenance. I live near the ocean, where everyone tends to own larger boats, and saltwater is tough on everything. Story 7. You will be fine with a small John boat. Boats are a labor of love, so if you do not love it, it is simply labor. Story 8. I owned a sailboat with a small outboard motor for 15 years. I took it out of the water every couple of years to clean the bottom. The woodwork required some maintenance. After purchasing it, I never had anyone else do any work on it and spent money on paint and varnish. I eventually sold it for slightly less than I paid. I also had a nice V8 wake boat and actually made a profit when I sold that one. I only took it to a mechanic once for carburetor work, which cost $100. I still haven't found the missing part. Story 9. A 14-foot John boat, especially if it's an old Alumacraft or Lund, is easy to maintain. I have one that hasn't seen more than a wash in 30 years. The 30-horsepower outboard motor receives an oil change once a year. Story 10. A boat is a hole in the water that you throw money into. There are two happiest days in the life of a boat owner: the day they buy a boat and the day they sell it. Boats can be a lot of fun, but they are not like other toys. You cannot just stick them in the garage and forget about them easily. They require the same upkeep as a car, but the engine works much harder and operates near the red line for long periods. Additionally, the corrosive nature of water, especially salt water, makes maintenance expensive. Story 11. You'll be fine with a John boat. They are referring to larger console boats that are expensive to repair. In the worst case, if your outboard motor fails, you might lose some money. However, having grown up fishing from basic John boats, I can tell you that aside from applying sealer and paint every few years, you're not really at risk. Enjoy your boat. Story 12. If you are considering a simple John boat and a basic outboard motor, you are not entering the breakout another thousand territory. You will need a trailer and a way to transport it, as well as storage. If you have access to the last two, then go ahead and try it out. You may also consider a fishing kayak. It is the ski boats, party barges, and fancy pontoons that are the real money pits. Story 13. John boats are the way to go. They are cheaper, easy to handle, and simple. The advice not to buy a boat usually applies when you start getting into the larger boats such as base boats, center consoles, and jet boats. Story 14. From what I've gathered from boat owners, unless you live in a port town with a marina and can get out on the water regularly, owning a boat can be more hassle than it's worth. Let's say you work a standard job in a town an hour from the Great Lakes. You enjoy fishing, so you decide to buy a boat. You think you'll go fishing at least every Saturday and most Sunday nights. Sometimes you and your partner may go out on the water to watch the sunset and enjoy ice cream. So getting a boat seems like a good idea. You buy the boat and have to purchase a trailer as well. During the week, it stays on the trailer, but on weekends, you get out to the lake. After checking the boat, you put it in the water and off you go. By this point, it's noon on Saturday. You fish for 3 hours, then load up and head home. It's now 5 p.m. It's so much fun that you plan to go out again tomorrow, earlier for a fuller day of fishing. But first, you need to get fuel. After spending a few $100s on fuel, you head back, load up the boat, and go home. From Monday to Friday, the boat takes up space in your driveway. Then the weather forecast calls for rain this weekend, so no boating. It sits in your garage. You make your bi-weekly payment and realize you spend a few $100s for under 7 hours of boating. This doesn't even include fuel and maintenance costs. By the way, you need to set aside some time next week to check the equipment and clean up the deck. Oops, a seal broke, and now you need to get parts and try to repair it yourself. That will be a weekend job. Guess no boating this week either. Maybe next weekend? Oh no, rain again. Look, another bi-weekly payment is due, and all you've done is spend hours and money fixing and maintaining the boat without enjoying the actual fun part. Story 15. In my opinion, a John boat might be the only exception to the rules. I have owned several large cabin sailboats, and while I have amazing memories, all of the fun is overshadowed by some not-so-fun experiences. Hurricanes, leaks, engine issues, navigation mistakes, and really expensive repairs. The best boat is a friend's boat. Nonetheless, definitely get a John boat if you want one. They are rugged, affordable, and plentiful. You can leave it unattended in your backyard for 5 years, and it won't be a problem. Get a good, reliable motor and you will have years of fun. Story 16. It depends on how much you use it. I use mine once a week. I have spent approximately $4,000 on it, including the original purchase, in 2 years. It has saved me about that amount in fresh fish and crayfish. Some people just buy it for novelty and complain about it later. Story 17. They are an expensive hobby. There is no return on investment for owning a boat unless you are restoring it or using it for a business. Otherwise, it is like combining a classic car and a hot tub. Story 18. It depends on the boat and its use. Some are not expensive to purchase or maintain, while others can cost a few $1,000s if the paint gets scratched. Personally, I believe recreational vehicles are a worse money pit, though. Story 19. I've owned 2 boats. One was a 19-foot runabout with a V8 Mercruiser stern drive, to which we added a wake tower. We used it several times a week every summer for 6 or 7 years. I performed all the regular maintenance myself, and it cost me less than $300 a year. The more time-consuming aspect was keeping it clean and polishing the hull when we took it out of the water in the fall. My current boat is a 23-foot powerboat with a Yamaha outboard. It stays in salt water year-round. Besides the purchase price, it hasn't cost me much in 2 years, which I attribute to knowing it inside and out and diligently maintaining it. This includes bi-weekly washing, rinsing, and relubricating corrosion-prone areas, and keeping it covered. You won't have any issues with a small John boat if you just spend a little time on upkeep. Boats can become expensive when you start paying for someone else to work on them, which is usually the case with larger, more complicated vessels. If you learn to understand your 12-volt and 24-volt systems, as well as general outboard maintenance, you will truly enjoy owning your own boat. One last piece of advice: buy used. Depreciation is significant within a year or two. Story 20. My father had to take his outboard motor in every year for maintenance. After 30 years, a mechanic asked him what type of gas he was using, and he replied regular. The mechanic advised him to use only premium fuel. He never had an issue again. I believe people are mostly referring to sporting boats. Story 21. A hole in the water that you throw money into. I had a small sailing cruiser for several years. I spent a lot of money on maintenance and improvements and eventually sold it at a loss. During that time, my sons were the crew, and we had a fantastic experience going on long trips to beautiful places as well as short weekend trips. We had some scary moments. I have no regrets. I sold it when my sons got older and didn't have the time to sail. Story 22. Buying any boat other than a simple trailer boat with an outboard motor should be taken as seriously as getting married. It is not a toy or status symbol. It is part of your life. You know it will come with costs. You know there will be times you regret your choice. You must commit time, effort, and love. When the sun is out, friends will be eager to enjoy the benefits of your sacrifice. They will be noticeably absent when maintenance is required. But there are times when everything comes together and it is you, your boat, and the freedom of the water. Magic. Story 23. Buy the John boat. You'll love having it. They are affordable and easy to maintain. You can get them dirty and simply spray them out with a hose and let them drain. I bought a used one 15 years ago and used it frequently for years. I have touched it probably 5 times since then, but they are so affordable that there's no point in getting rid of it. I like knowing that when I want to go fishing, it's there and ready to serve my needs. Story 24. Because people like to pretend they are intelligent. They heard someone else discuss why one should not own a boat and then thought, wow, that person sounds intelligent. They adopted that perspective and applied it without consideration to every boat owner in the world. Story 25. A boat often leads to significant expenses. They can become financial burdens, and you may not recover what you invest. While there's nothing inherently wrong with owning a boat, it's essential to be aware that you will likely spend more than you anticipate. Story 26. Owning a boat is like standing under a shower and tearing up $100 bills. You get wet and lose a lot of money. Don't do it unless, of course, you have so much cash that you don't care. Story 27. Life is short. Get a boat and have fun. Don't expect it to be cheap. I have a boat, and I also have the ability to fix anything, which saves me a lot of money. My boat needed many repairs when I got it, but since then, it has been great and hasn't cost much relatively. I love being out on the water. It's so relaxing and enjoyable. I have no desire to sell my boat unless it's to get a bigger one. Enjoy life. Story 28. Context. I have a used 1990, 26-foot cabin cruiser. Firstly, you will spend far more keeping your boat afloat than you think you will. Secondly, it will cost you more to fuel up than you expect. Thirdly, you will probably spend more time working on it than enjoying it, less so with small fishing boats than with a cruiser like mine. Finally, if you have something a bit bigger that requires a slip in a marina and winter storage, that too is not inexpensive. It's still worth it, but you need deep pockets. It's not quite as challenging with a smaller vessel like you are considering, but being forewarned is being forearmed. Story 29. It depends on the individual. My father-in-law practically lives on his boat. He goes out in his bass boat fishing at least once a week, even during times of the year when you really wouldn't want to be out on the lake. Here in Texas, there are really only a couple of months when it is too cold to go, unless you have the determination to brave the weather anyway. For him, it's not a waste of money because he genuinely loves being out on his boat and uses it constantly, as he goes fishing whenever he can. He also invested in an all-aluminum hull boat. As for my friend, he should have just rented a boat for the 1 or 2 times a year he actually uses it. For him, it is a complete waste of money. First, it is made of fiberglass and inevitably will fall apart. Second, it is overkill, a dual-engine ski boat that he doesn't even use for skiing. Third, he only takes it out once a year, maybe twice, to have a good time at the lake before returning home. He also spends a lot of money every year on maintenance, storage, and getting it running before he uses it because he tends to forget about it for 364 days of the year. For him, it was a poor purchase. Story 30. A small 14-foot boat is completely different from a large boat. A small boat incurs lower expenses, while a large boat has higher costs. Keep your battery charged, provide fresh fuel, and change your impeller once a year, which is very simple. That covers about 90% of your servicing and maintenance. Don't listen to anyone who doesn't own and regularly use a small boat. Just make sure you use it. They don't like to sit neglected for long periods, or you will encounter issues. Story 31. Because they are expensive to buy, costly and time-consuming to maintain, unlikely to get much use, and difficult to dispose of. Story 32. Boats are expensive to maintain, moor, and store. Seafaring boats, in particular, are frequently exposed to harsh environments, leading to issues such as fouling, the need for new propellers, new batteries, engine rebuilds, and trim replacement. Depending on your location, you may not get much use out of them. It might be better to rent. Story 33. Unless you're going to use it regularly, at least 2 to 3 times a week, it is an absolute waste of money. You are better off investing that money in some stocks. Story 34. Get the John boat. A 14-foot John boat is not a financial burden and will be worth it for you and anyone you take out to enjoy. Boats that are money pits are either older models that need constant repairs or new ones that you don't have time to use, causing them to sit unused and require attention. I have an 18-foot John boat with a 90-horsepower motor. I've had it for 20 years and could sell it now for what I paid for it. I've never spent more than a couple of $100s on maintenance or repairs at a time. Good luck and get the boat. Story 35. Boats are like pools. You don't want to own one, you want a friend who owns one. Speaking as a pool owner, they're money pits. Or if you prefer the horse version of the joke, do you want to make a small fortune as an equestrian? Start with a large fortune. Story 36. Not a boat owner, but my uncle had one and he once told my parents he is convinced the term means break out another 1,000. Story 37. You will not use it as much as you expect. It will cost more than you anticipate to maintain and operate. Additionally, it will spend considerable amounts of time being unavailable for use due to the need for repairs. Story 38. John's boat will not be bad. Once you start using more complex systems, it can become a problem. It also depends on your love for the water and how you use it. Bring on another 1,000 stands for a reason. Story 39. Not the owner of a boat, but a guy with friends who have boats. They require considerable effort to maintain and significant money to dock if you do not intend to keep it in your driveway, risking homeowner association fines instead. Story 40. My uncle owns a boat, and he says it is a money pit. The few times they take it out do not offset the maintenance costs. Story 41. When you buy it, just remember it is going to cost you double the list price. You have to get it registered, titled, insured, pay sales tax, and then do a lot of little maintenance and improvements. Don't forget to keep the bearings well greased, check the lights, and possibly redo them. Make sure the motor runs and that you have all the safety equipment, including a fire extinguisher, sounding device, running lights, and life jackets. Then you can start to think about fixing up the dilapidated decking and carpet. But they can be worth it. Story 42. They depreciate and are difficult to pull in and out of the water, so it is better to have a waterfront property with a dock that you will use frequently, or else the money spent is wasted. Fortunately for my uncles, They invested in nice lakeside properties and have a large family eager for rides. Story 43. A 14-foot John boat isn't the kind of boat people typically refer to. That's not even a skiff. It's practically a kayak. Usually, the complaints are about larger boats with expensive parts and significant maintenance needs, such as cabin cruisers and speedboats. These are the types of vessels where the annual cost of storage and maintenance is roughly comparable to the total purchase price of a John boat. Story 44. There are many types of boats, but generally, when people refer to boats, they are talking about those that are more expensive. These boats can be costly to maintain, require gasoline, and may necessitate a new vehicle if your current one cannot tow it. Additionally, you'll need a place to store the boat year-round. It makes complete sense if you live on the water or have easy access to it, as you will likely use it often. For people who do not live near bodies of water, it seems illogical unless they have the time and money to travel and use the boat regularly. There are also many options that could be considered boats but are very affordable. Story 45. Yes, it can be expensive. There is the initial purchase price, followed by maintenance and upgrade costs. I have been racing on sailboats for about 20 years now. You will see boats in a range of conditions. Depending on where you fall on the spectrum, your annual costs will vary dramatically. Do you have facilities to store it year-round, or will you be renting space? As soon as you add marine grade to any part, the price immediately increases because it is either a higher grade for life at sea, uncommon, or both. Even in simple tasks like waxing and compounding to maintain the luster of the boat, there is more area to cover and faster wear. Additionally, there are mandatory safety equipment requirements that need to be replaced periodically. It is very easy to accumulate costs of $100 here and there. Story 46. Boats before COVID-19 used to be the biggest depreciating asset you could ever own. Now, people are selling 20-year-old boats for as much as they bought them in 2014. Story 47. The two best days of a boat owner's life are the day he buys a boat and the day he sells it. If you need an indication, observe how many boats are listed for sale during tough economic times like these. Story 48. When I was a child, my father went on vacation and took a sailing class. He decided to buy a small sailboat. I have no idea what he paid for it, but we used it once and had to be towed back to shore. He sold it after it sat in our yard for 2 years. Story 49. I grew up living on a decently sized lake and we used our boats. A 18-foot runabout ski boat, jet skis, and a 14-foot sailboat. Frequently. It made sense for us to own them because we would use them 3 to 5 times a week from late May to late September. However, the amount of regular maintenance needed to keep them serviceable was incredible. Fortunately, the lake was just steps from our house, and we had the runabout and jet skis on hydraulic lifts. Additionally, registration, insurance, and gas from marinas and floating stations were 2 to 3 times more expensive than at regular gas stations. At the same time we had the boat and the house on the lake, we owned a Chevrolet van with a 350 engine in it, and our boat also had a Cruiser 350 engine. They shared the same block and many of the same parts. Repairs were at least 3 times more expensive and took 3 to 5 times longer. I now live in a landlocked city. We have friends with boats who have to tow them 60 to 90 minutes away to use them. If they're lucky, they use them 5 to 10 times a summer and need secure storage for them. They also require a tow vehicle, which adds to the expense of owning a boat. Story 50. My 17-foot sailboat with no engine is about to cost me a third of its purchase price to replace the trampoline. This does not include the yearly storage cost, which is more than what I paid for the boat, and if I try hard, I can get it out 8 times this year, just enough to keep my slip. My club is also a community sailing center with an annual membership cost of around $300, which allows almost unlimited usage of club boats. The members are definitely getting the better deal. Story 51. Someone once said the 2 greatest days of a boat owner's life are the day they buy the boat and the day they sell it. Story 52. Unless you are doing business with it to generate income, it will quickly drain your money. Story 53. I am a boat owner. I own a late 2000s bow rider. Most of my expenses came from upgrading the sound system. When I bought the boat in 2021, it had minimal issues. I handled the basic tune-ups myself. I just wish I had purchased a bigger boat. Story 54. Don't believe them. Please buy a brand new 2024 Sea Ray 320 Sundancer. It offers easy maintenance and you won't have any problems. Story 55. A 14-foot John boat is hardly a boat, as the saying goes. There is not much that can go wrong with it. Motor, boat, oars, and gas tank. Larger boats have 1,000 things that can break or malfunction. Story 56. In your case, the boat isn't going to be the main issue. It's the motor. They require a lot of maintenance, which is extremely expensive, and it's almost guaranteed you will never be able to resell it for anything near what you purchased it for. Here are a few anecdotes in line with that thinking. The two best days for a boat owner are the day he buys his boat and the day he sells his boat. Boat. Break out another 1,000. The definition of a boat is a hole in the water where you throw your money. Story 57. You need to understand that it is not an investment but a constant cost, both in money and effort. Be realistic about how often you will use it. If you live a lifestyle that allows you to enjoy it frequently throughout the year, the enjoyment will outweigh the costs. However, if you find yourself spending more time looking at it in the driveway or maintaining it rather than using it, you may come to regret your decision. Story 58. The happiest day in a boat owner's life is the day they buy their boat. The second happiest day is the day they sell it. It is all about the upkeep costs and labor. Story 59. Unless you live on a lake or fish frequently, it's not worth it. Storage and upkeep can be expensive if you do not have a significant amount of disposable income. Decomposition occurs quickly if you are not maintaining it regularly. Proper maintenance requires a considerable investment of either your personal time or money if you hire someone else to do it. Story 60. There's a saying, a man's two happiest days are the first day he buys a boat and the second day he sells it. Story 61. I don't see a John boat being too much of a financial burden. You'll just have to resist finding excuses to upgrade it. Remember, good enough is sufficient. If you don't use it enough, consider selling or renting it out. Story 62. I think you'll find that they're referring to a large boat, not a small 14-foot John boat. Having had a few John boats over my lifetime, I wouldn't advise against one. The only recommendation I have for my area is to get a jet unit for the outboard motor, as you cannot run a propeller unit here, and to learn how to use the outboard with the jet unit. John boats are some of the simplest boats available, just barely above a canoe. They don't require any of the maintenance that larger boats do. Go ahead and get your John boat and enjoy it. Hopefully, you'll have as much fun with it as I have with mine, ranging from 12 to 20 feet. Story 63. Boats are expensive to maintain, and there is always something going on with them. Boat engines are finicky and require a lot of maintenance. A metal John boat is relatively cheap to own because it is simple, and not much can go wrong as long as there are no leaks or weak rivets. The simpler the boat, the less expensive it is, and vice versa. If you choose a more complicated boat, like a competition-based boat, wake boat, or cabin cruiser, things will malfunction, break, short out, or simply not work. The older the boat and motor, the more that will go wrong. My father-in-law has an older 16-foot Alumacraft boat that he mounted a new Suzuki 15-horsepower motor to 2 years ago. That has been the worst boat motor I have ever seen. It constantly experiences power loss, often fails to start, and when it does work, it randomly cuts out. He has taken it to the shop 4 times in the last 2 years. While it is covered under warranty, 2 of those times caused him to miss fishing trips. His time has been wasted, and you can never get your time back. Eventually, that warranty will expire, and when that happens, I dread the bills he will have to pay because I have no faith in that unreliable motor to stop having issues. Additionally, his boat has developed a slow leak. His plan is to pull the boat and have someone solder, braze, or weld the seams, but that will not be cheap and will be very time-consuming. That is even more money. In the spring, when he took his boat out of storage, he found that a trailer taillight was not working, so he had to rewire the trailer. More time and money. The list goes on, just unexpected expenses. Story 64. Most people underestimate the true costs of owning a boat and skimp on maintenance, which leads to even more expensive repairs down the road. They also overestimate how much they will use a boat, and the return on investment just isn't there. It can be a significant expense for something you only enjoy a few times a year. That said, boating can be a fun hobby, but you need to be diligent with your preventative maintenance. You have to make an intentional choice to use the boat frequently during the season and find activities to enjoy while boating. Going for a quick ride is fun for a while, but it's much better if you have destinations or activities planned. Consider visiting a waterfront restaurant with a dock, fishing, or tubing and skiing. Story 65. The two happiest days in a boat owner's life are the day they buy a boat and the day they sell the boat. Epic money pits. Story 66. I grew up in a family that always owned at least one boat, whether trailered or berthed. The kind of boat referred to is a higher-end speedboat or cabin cruiser. Many people buy a boat that they don't use very often, which is why renting is often advised. However, if you live on or near water, such as lakes or estuaries, and use it frequently as we did, then you'll truly appreciate the enjoyment it brings. Smaller, simple fishing boats like a John boat require very little maintenance and provide a lot of fun if you love to fish. If you enjoy water skiing, as we did, it represents a significant investment, but that just reflects that water skiing is one of the more expensive hobbies. Ultimately, it's about the value, not just the cost. Story 67. Because BOAT is an acronym for Break Out Another 1,000, meaning they are expensive to fix and maintain. Story 68. The only good way to own a boat is to let my dad make a midlife crisis purchase, then use the boat whenever I want. But believe me, as soon as I inherit that beautiful, wonderful money pit, I'm going to sell it before I have to pay my taxes for the next quarter. If I can't sell it that fast, I'm going to sink it rather than pay all those taxes, fees, costs, wages, and so on. No mortal can be rich enough to justify the upkeep of a boat that's an appropriate size for their net worth. Purchasing one? Sure, but the upkeep is rough. If you want to get rid of money so badly, just burn it. I mean, literally burn it with fire. Unless the boat is the apex of joy in your earthly existence and you'd be miserable without it, don't have one. It's a bad idea. Cool one. Probably the coolest possible idea you can have. But a bad one, nonetheless. Also, whatever the boat salesperson tries to tell you, it's not an asset. It's a liability. You're literally purchasing a piece of plastic, wood, and metal just to store it under direct sunlight in salt water. I cannot stress enough how foolish an idea it is from a financial point of view. Story 69. Every minute a boat is exposed to the elements. Whether in the water or on your driveway, it degrades and breaks down, likely accumulating fees. People caution against buying boats because they are a poor investment and a growing money pit. This is easy to understand, but denial and ego can be powerful. People still buy boats due to an overly romanticized view of themselves as boat owners. They daydream about fishing every weekend, water skiing, or sailing off the coast, envisioning the classic sailboat or houseboat. The dream of living aboard a beautiful sailboat, ready to set sail for unknown destinations at a moment's notice, often ignores the reality of constant maintenance, high utility and slip fees, and the fact that many boats are barely seaworthy. Then there are all the additional costs. You need to own a trailer and a truck capable of towing it. You may need to have several contacts on hand who charge by the hour when your boat unexpectedly requires repairs. You must have a plan for winterizing it and storing it out of the elements. You need to know basic boat maintenance and acquire specific tools, along with many general tools. The least expensive aspect of owning a boat is the initial purchase. Don't assume that just because you can afford the purchase price, you can afford the ongoing costs of ownership. Story 70. I was part of a boating family for several years with my ex. It's a fun hobby. Being out on the water is my happy place. It's relaxing. That's my experience of not having to worry about the headaches of ownership, though. I didn't have to tow it. Her father always winterized, maintained, and fueled it. It was his livelihood. If I had to pay for all of that, I would never own a boat. Boats aren't small. They require a trailer, which takes up space wherever you intend to store it while not in use. That's an assumption because I'm sure you're going to rent a slip for a small fishing boat. Even if it's just a small one, they aren't cheap to operate. They consume fuel quickly, and you often need premium gas and specific oil. Storing the boat during winter is always a guessing game for when you open it in spring. Mice love to set up camp in boats. Even with a hand throttle, they'll find a way to nest in your outboard motor. If they don't do that, they'll chew through your cover and make a mess. Outboard motors aren't cheap to replace. They are somewhat easy to work on if you have some mechanical intuition. If not, labor costs can add up. You spend far more time cleaning up after your outings than you do enjoying them. That includes making sure you're not going to sink, fueling, getting set up, breaking down, uncovering, covering, managing trash, and rinsing. Add a few hours every time you take it out for this. If you decide to wait until tomorrow because you're tired, you'll definitely regret it. You need to register and insure the boat. The costs aren't high but are worth noting. I'm not trying to deter you. It's a lot of fun. I do miss it sometimes. I didn't have to worry about the negatives, though. The only parts one had to manage were the cover and removing trash from my outings. Personally, I'd rent a boat when you want to use one. It's far cheaper and takes the hassle out of the hobby. Good luck with your decision. Story 71. I think it depends on the size of the boat. One of my uncles has a large houseboat on Lake Powell in Utah. It is a constant source of frustration for him, especially when he rents it out because people do not respect other people's property. Another uncle lived on a sailboat in Hong Kong for a couple of years. He said that aside from attracting women, it was a disaster. He eventually moved back to the States, specifically to the landlocked mountainous Utah, and his boat is still in Hong Kong, costing him money. On the other hand, I own a 16-foot aluminum John boat with a small outboard motor. I fish and hunt extensively with it, and I have never had a problem other than wishing I could do more of it. There was that one time I forgot the plug. That was a short trip. Story 72. It is a significant amount of work and an endless financial burden. You need to utilize it extensively to make it worthwhile. Story 73. Ours is not bad, but my dad is also a mechanic and does the maintenance himself. They do have a lot of problems, especially the bigger ones. That said, get a boat. Story 74. We had Sea-Doos that we only used a few times in the first 2 years, and hardly at all in the remaining 4 years until I sold them this year. Other than regular maintenance, there was always something else that needed to be done. My dad has an older pontoon boat, which gave him problems throughout 2021. He had it in the shop for nearly the entire year, but they couldn't fix it. He finally got it repaired in 2022, but I think something was still wrong with it. It really depends on how much you are realistically going to use it to determine if it is a good investment for you. Story 75. I can only speak for myself, but I have owned over 11 boats in the last 40 years and would do it all over again. These boats have all been for fishing, specifically bass fishing. We started with just fun fishing, but gradually got into tournament fishing. I have spent countless hours fishing for fun and competitively with my daughters and my wife, and now with my granddaughter. We have won some tournaments and have had days where we did not catch anything. But the time spent together on the boat, whether talking or simply enjoying each other's company, is priceless. I have also made some lifelong friends through fishing. We have fished in various weather conditions, including rain, snow, sleet, high winds, and occasionally on nice days. Yes, boats are not cheap to buy or own, but I wouldn't trade these experiences for anything else, although I recognize that boating is not for everyone. Story 76. I have never owned a boat, but what I see from my friends and family who do is that it is not just the boat you buy. It is also the trailer you need to purchase, the truck to haul it, the dock you must build, all the tools and equipment required, the registration, and the rules and laws to follow. I would prefer my friends and family to own before I do. Story 77. We had a couple of small sailing dinghies when I was little. I think my dad was constantly doing maintenance work on them. Story 78. You are better off digging a hole in the ground and throwing all your hard-earned cash into that hole instead. Story 79. Because people underestimate how much work owning a boat requires. Even with a fiberglass boat, you need money for maintenance and to ensure it is placed in dry dock for the winter, which also incurs expenses. Wooden boats require even more care. I remember my old neighbor had a classic wooden sailing boat. I think he went sailing about 5 times in a span of 17 years. The rest of the time was spent sanding and painting. Then there are regular costs like fuel, new buoys occasionally, and rope, among others. I live in the Netherlands, where boating is relatively affordable due to our strong sailing culture. However, it remains an activity primarily for the middle class and above because of the initial and ongoing costs involved. Consider your morning on the lake. Do you live close to a lake? Is the boat already in the water and ready to go? If not, think about everything you need to do to prepare for that morning on the lake. We used to have our boat literally in front of our door in the canal, and even with that convenience, it always took a while to get going. Story 80. If you have enough spare money to buy 2 boats, you can safely purchase 1 boat. You will spend the remaining money on the first boat, which will ultimately cost as much as 2 boats over the next 2 years. The issue is that many people buy 1 boat when they barely have enough money for it. Once they have the boat, they cannot do anything with it because they do not have the funds to repair it when something goes wrong. Story 81. They are an expense. I asked a friend who wanted to buy one for fishing if he often fished without a boat. His answer was no, yet he bought the boat anyway. He has used it nearly every weekend since. I then asked my brother about his boat usage, and he mentioned he has used his boat 3 times in the last 2 years. Perhaps it's a case-by-case situation. Story 82. That comment is really for larger boats, I would say. A John boat is low maintenance and meant to be used roughly. You can hardly damage it. I wouldn't buy a new John boat, canoe, kayak, or similar because it's not going to look good for long. Imagine you just bought a nice fiberglass base boat. You pick up your friend, and while getting in, he steps on the seat and rips it. Later in the day, he spills his beer or soda on your new carpet. Then he catches a fish and there's blood everywhere. You see another friend on the lake, and he gets closer than he should, resulting in your first blemish. Finally, you find what looks like a good spot but hit a rock on the way there. Now your new boat needs repairs, and the only part that feels new is the payment. Compare this to a John boat where you can throw it in the truck, run it in 6 inches of water, beach it intentionally, and possibly hose it off at the end. They are entirely different experiences. Enjoy, Captain. Story 83. A John boat is probably an exception to this. My next-door neighbor has one. He uses it a lot and seems fairly maintenance-free. A $60,000 boat? Yes, renting is cheaper. A $2,000 to $3,000 John boat? Have fun. Story 84. Boats are often referred to as bust out another $1,000 because they can be costly. They tend to be money pits. I used to own a 32-foot Baja, which was incredibly fun. However, during a single weekend in 2016, just the gas cost between $400 and $500. I also had 2 drives on the boat, and within 2 weeks of buying it, one of the drives failed. You guessed it, it cost nearly another $1,000 to get it fixed. The best advice about boats is that unless you have enough money for one, it's better to become best friends with someone who does. Story 85. I don't think John boats fall into the category of money pits. They are almost a bare minimum boat, easy enough to park at your house. It's the shiny boats that you park at the marina. Even the car-sized ones probably add up. Story 86. 14-foot John boat. When people mention boats being a pain, they are not referring to inflatable Zodiacs or aluminum fishing boats. These are suitable for fishermen or outdoor enthusiasts and can easily be placed on a trailer and stored in a backyard or garage when not in use. Instead, they refer to cabin cruisers or sailing vessels larger than a laser. These are significant financial burdens. In the best-case scenario, you will be paying mooring fees, which can reach several $100s per foot in desirable locations, totaling several $1,000s a season. Additionally, you must winterize and store the boat if you are in a place that freezes in winter, which can also cost several $1,000s. Large cabin cruisers consume a lot of fuel, necessitating stops at marinas that charge high prices due to limited marine fueling options. They may require additional licensing and registration, depending on the local regulations, and are subject to more rules, along with other ancillary costs such as safety equipment and fees if you dock at islands away from your home marina. Boats, even from reputable brands, often need frequent maintenance due to constant exposure to water, which can be costly, especially with true inboard engines that limit your service options. You can easily spend $5,000 per year just to store and minimally operate a moderately sized cabin cruiser, 20 to 30 feet. It may not be glamorous or comfortable, and many people can only go out on weekends. Costs can escalate significantly in desirable areas and with heavy usage. Story 87. Speaking from experience, boats start losing value the moment you buy them. Leaks can occur anywhere, and if the hull gets damaged, it is a total loss. If you want a boat, consider renting it. Story 88. I have some friends with boats. They seem like they are never done. They are always talking about some problem, maintenance, or an issue with the engines or how expensive it is to fuel them up. It just seems to be a permanent drain. If you have the cash, enjoy. Story 89. I live about 10 minutes from a freshwater beach located in a provincial park. That's how I enjoy my time by the water without the expense of a boat or a pool. I have a $50 inflatable, a $200 sun tent, a camp chair, a cooler, and a Kindle. Story 90. It's a significant investment, similar to purchasing a car. Depending on the boat, you must take great care of it. Story 91. My neighbor was a boat mechanic. The parts are significantly more expensive than people think. Engines require high maintenance. Story 92. We have had 4 boats, and they are absolutely money pits. However, hobbies are expensive. Golf, sewing, gardening, art, classic cars, and more. All of those activities can be money pits. If you go into it knowing what it entails and still enjoy it, then it is worth it. Story 93. If you do not live on a lake where you can use a boat frequently, it is not worth the investment. You will never recover the money you spent, you likely do not have as much time as you think to take a boat out, and maintenance costs are high. Story 94. It depends, but typically they're a money pit. The maintenance, insurance, fuel, breakdowns, and other costs add up. It's not a cheap hobby. I owned one and was always spending money on it. I had a lot of fun, but it can be a headache. Story 95. It's a hole in the water you throw money into. Keeping a boat nice is a losing battle every time, but it is worth it if it makes you happy to do. Just make sure you don't jump in over your head the first time. Story 96. That is not a money sink. What they are discussing is individuals who live on the lake and own a boat dock with a boat lift for an approximately $80,000 ski boat. I have seen Malibu wave runners priced over $150,000. They may use that boat only a few weekends each year, if at all. There are costs associated with the boat, the dock, and the boat lift. This kind of lifestyle could cost you $500,000 or more for the initial purchase of the boat, the construction of the dock, and the installation of the lift, along with upwards of $20,000 in upkeep, maintenance, and related expenses. Story 97. Boats are fantastic to own if you are happy to spend a lot of time and money on upkeep. If you can easily afford the maintenance and are okay with the fact that you will likely lose money on it over the years, then go for it. There is no better way to spend weekends during the summer. I own a river cruiser in the UK. It is an absolute money sink, but it is worth it. Story 98. Boats are the most efficient way to waste money. The amount of preventative maintenance required is something many people are not accustomed to and may avoid. They require extensive maintenance. Story 99. 3 main reasons. Boats are expensive to buy and maintain. New boats devalue quickly like cars, and few people who buy them get sufficient use from them to make ownership cheaper than renting. Much of this depends on the initial price of the boat and whether it is new or used. An aluminum hull John boat, equipped with a small outboard or trolling motor, can be purchased used at a low cost. This minimizes concerns about purchase price and depreciation. If the winters are mild where you live, you may not need to winterize your outboard. If you can handle basic maintenance yourself, it is not an expensive task. Registration of the boat and trailer will incur some costs, but they are manageable. The frequency of use is often the main issue. Public boat ramps can be frustrating, and on weekends and holidays, getting your boat in the water can take half a day as you wait in line for those who struggle to launch their boats. If you can go to the lake on a weekday or during less busy times, your experience will be much more enjoyable. My own experience was that the boat was intended for family fun. They came exactly twice, and then no one wanted to join anymore. We had a slip at the marina, so launching was easy. Unless the plan is to fish quietly by yourself, ensure your family and friends are fully committed. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.